Hi, this is Polly from thefitmumformula.com, and today I'm going to talk about how to make healthy food more tasty. Now I want to start off by saying just because a food is healthy doesn't mean it's not tasty. Personally, I think a salmon fillet just simply baked in the oven as it is delicious. I also think broccoli is a really tasty vegetable, sweet potatoes are delicious, all of these are really healthy foods, but I can appreciate that some things are a little bit more bland, and a plain skinless grilled chicken breast and some boiled carrots gets a little bit dull and repetitive after a while. So how do we make food more tasty and varied, and how do we change things up and get more variety while keeping the food and the meal itself really healthy? Well, let's start off by saying what is a healthy meal. Now it's going to depend on your goals and your personal needs, but basically you're going to need some sort of protein, so fish, poultry, meat, eggs, and a sweet meal, it might be Greek yogurt or protein powder, or cheese, cottage cheese, lots of things like that are protein foods. Then you've got vegetables and salad, everybody knows what they are, and sometimes you might, and then the rest of your meal you'll either be having some starch like potatoes, sweet potatoes, rice, or maybe you'll be having some fats like some nuts or some seeds, some avocado, that kind of thing. And the amounts of how much you have in that meal is going to depend on your personal needs, both in terms of the calories that you need and also your energy needs. Like, you know, some people will need more carbohydrates if they're extremely active than others, as an example. So let's start with some things that are not so useful for weight loss as a goal, because most people who follow the Fit Mum formula do come to me for weight loss. So the things that you want to avoid are the things that add a lot of calories that don't serve so much of a purpose in terms of keeping you full and making you feel your best. Now, there's nothing wrong with fat and sugar, but both of them are high calorie and not as filling as protein and vegetables. So the things that are not evil but aren't so helpful when you're trying to lose weight are the things that are high in sugar. Now this is primarily, when it comes to flavouring foods, it tends to be the Oriental things. So it's things like sweet and sour sauces, hoisin sauces, sweet chili sauce, also things like pickles and chutneys that are sugar based. Some of them aren't, but a lot of them are based around kind of a sugary sweet syrup, have things like raisins in them. You'll know because they taste sweet, basically. So anything that tastes sweet, it is because it has sugar in it. Sometimes it can be a natural form, sometimes it can be honey, but again, honey is still a sugar, so they're not quite so helpful, and you just want to have slightly smaller amounts of those. And the other one are things that are high in fat. So these are sauces that are very oily, often Indian sauces and sometimes Mediterranean sauces with their olive oil as well can be very oily. That's very high in fat. Things that have a lot of butter in them, cream, and sometimes cheese as well. All of these things add a lot of calories without adding much in terms of keeping you full and keeping you satisfied for longer and helping you to naturally reduce your calorie intake. So on to the best things to add to your meals. Now, the possibilities are endless, and this list is not exhaustive by any means, but here is a list here that I've got here that are some of my favourite things that I use, and I tend to rotate. I have whatever I feel like on the day, and here's a list of some of my favourite things you can add to foods or cook with or use as salad dressings, or just a little bit thrown on your meal at the end just to change the flavour up. Mix into stir fries, that kind of thing, just to add a bit of variety while not taking away from the nutritional value of the meal. They're not going to be adding junk to it, but they're not going to be adding a load of extra calories either. And some of them actually have their own health benefits in their own right. So starting at the top, lemon juice and lime juice, great with fish dishes, and also lime is great for Thai dishes and Oriental things. All herbs and spices, fresh herbs especially nutritious, and obviously the fresher the spices you can get, they've got health benefits of their own right, so they'll also be more flavoursome if they're more fresh as well. Garlic and ginger. Ginger, some people love it, some people hate it, but most people love garlic. Even if you think you don't like garlic, just adding a tiny bit, so you can't even detect that it's garlic, can really bring out the flavour of food, and it's really, really tasty for most people. Anchovies, again, another one that some people think, I don't like those, but actually, maybe you don't like them when you can taste the whole thing. But let's take, for example, if you were to mix a couple of chopped up anchovies into a lamb casserole. Lamb and anchovies is an amazing mix. You can't taste the anchovies, it just brings out the flavour and it really, really enhances it. Parmesan cheese. Whoa, I just said no cheese, right? No. Parmesan, there's nothing wrong with cheese per se, it's just that it's, full fat cheese, very high calorie. Parmesan is so flavourful that you only need a tiny bit. And add to that, given that you usually grate it onto meals, when you grate Parmesan, it kind of fluffs it up a bit. So if you're thinking you're adding like a heaped tablespoon onto your meal, it looks like more than it is. If you were to weigh that tablespoon, it's actually very light, because once you grate it, it becomes more voluminous. And again, it's so high in flavour that you only need that tiny bit. What have we got next on my list? Ketchup, HP sauce and barbecue sauce. Now these are kind of middle ground ones, because some of you are going to be thinking there, now hang on, they've got added sugar, added salt. Yes, you're right. These things are not health foods. That's HP sauce, ketchup and barbecue sauce. They're not health foods per se. They don't offer a lot of benefits, but neither are they massively high calorie when you're using them in normal amounts. So maybe a couple of teaspoons, a tablespoon added to your meal. They're not massively high in calories, so they're not really going to be doing a lot of damage. Yes, they add a bit of salt. Yes, they add a bit of sugar, but in terms of the things you could be doing to make your diet bad for you, there are a lot worse things than a tablespoon of ketchup, Don't worry, if you're having a burger and chips and a milkshake and ketchup, trust me, it's not the ketchup that's the problem, okay? A little bit of ketchup on your meal, if it makes it more tasty and it encourages you to eat a healthy meal because it's tastier, a little bit of ketchup every now and again is absolutely fine. Okay, vinegar next on my list. I love all types of vinegar, and I tend to use them as salad dressings. Apple cider vinegar is especially good for digestion as well, and balsamic vinegar is delicious on roast vegetables. If you throw it in either at the end or while it's cooking, it's a really, really nice thing to have on roasted courgettes and onions and peppers. It's a delicious combination. It brings out the natural sweetness of the vegetables as well. So balsamic is a favourite of mine. Hot chili sauce. If you like hot foods, hot chili sauce tends to be fairly low calorie, tends to be low sugar compared to, say, the sweet chili sauce, which is pretty sugary. It's just basically a sugar syrup. But hot chili sauce tends to be not very sugary. Sometimes it can be a little bit oily if they've used a lot of oil in it, but generally the hot ones, they are more a case of like more of a chili paste mixed in with a little bit of oil. And the fact that it is very hot means that you're going to be using a tiny bit, and unless you're one of those mad people who likes just crazy amounts of hot sauce all over your food. Not me personally, each to their own, but anyway, hot sauce is not generally one of the higher calorie sauces, and there are some benefits to chilies as well. They've got some properties in their own right, chilies. They can slightly speed up your metabolism, only a tiny bit, don't rely on it for weight loss, but the fact that you feel warm and you can sweat when you eat chilies and hot spicy food, that's because your metabolism is speeding up. That's genuinely what is happening. Okay, next we've got stock cubes. Calorie free, some of them are high in salt, some of them are a little bit bulked up with, a few additives and stuff, but at the end of the day, they are not they're not the biggest crime in the nutrition world. A few little additives here and there. Additives are not allowed on the market unless they are safe. And you can get some natural versions as well, but stock and stock cubes is really, really flavourful, and it adds a lot of taste to things like sauces, casseroles, gravies, all that kind of thing. So I like stock cubes. Spice blends, again, we've already spoken about spices, but if you want a quick way to add like a certain particular flavour, maybe it's Indian, maybe it's Moroccan, maybe it's Chinese, that's where spice blends are really useful, because they're quick, because then you don't have to faff about with trying to get the right amounts of the right one. They're already mixed together for you, and they tend to be have names that are very easy to understand. So they have a Chinese spice blend, or a Moroccan spice blend, or a Spanish spice blend. You know, they're very easy to use, very user friendly. Onions and celery and leeks. Now there's a reason why those three, and carrots as well, are used as the basis for things like, I can't remember the name of it now, maybe one of you you foodie people remind me the name, but that combination is often used as the basis for things like casseroles, bolognese, and then you add your other things on top. And the reason is that combination is really, really flavourful. I'm not personally a fan of celery raw, but when it's cooked in things like a bolognese sauce, it goes really, really well. And it also, they're all very low calorie. Remember, they're vegetables as well, so it's a way of adding low calorie bulk, adding some fibre and some vitamins through extra vegetables in your meals. So that combination is awesome. Olives and olive paste. Again, yes, olives have oil in them, they've got fat in them, but they're very tasty, and you only need a tiny bit for that reason. So either as a rub, as a slight marinade, or just a teaspoon of olive paste mixed into things. Very flavourful, especially Mediterranean-y, tomato-y type things. Capers, the same reason. Capers very flavourful, so you only need a small amount, and capers are great on salads and all sorts of things. You know, Google some recipes, see what you can come up with. Salt and pepper. Simple, right? But chefs all over the world use tons of salt and pepper. The reason is it brings out the flavour of your food. No, nobody should be having buckets and buckets of salt, but a little bit of salt and pepper on your food in normal amounts is fine. And especially if you're eating healthy food, you're going to be eating a lot less processed food. And it's the added salt in processed food that really contributes enormous amounts to our Western diet. So if you're not eating lots of processed foods, lots of breads, cereals, biscuits, crisps, things like that, then you're not going to be getting nearly as much salt anyway. So don't worry about adding a bit of salt to your food. That's fine. And some people actually do better on a little bit of salt. I know personally I do. I prefer a lower carb diet, and I naturally have very low blood pressure, and I actually feel better when I add some high quality Himalayan salt to my food, and it tastes good. Soy sauce, another salty one, so same rules apply. But soy sauce is incredibly tasty, and it's incredibly simple. Throw some on the end of the stir fry, suddenly you've gone from plain meat and vegetables to a really tasty dish. And it's so simple. Fish sauce, very similar to soy sauce. Highly flavourful, very low calorie. Throw a bit in either during or just at the end of cooking something Chinesey, Oriental-y. Really, really tasty. Spring onions, like onions and garlic and all of those, very, very flavoursome. Some people like them raw. They are very, very pungent, so maybe you're somebody who prefers them cooked in things like stir fries. Personal preference, but they are a great way to add more flavour to your food. Pickled vegetables, things like gherkins, piccalilli. Remember I mentioned chutneys before? Well, some things like piccalilli are actually a lot more tart and a lot less sweet because they have less sugar in them. So those kind of pickled sauce type chutney, things like that, are a lot lower calorie. Vinegar helps slow down the digestion of your food in them as well, and they're very high in flavour. Low sugar salsa and low salt salsas. I'm talking about tomato salsas there, tomato and pepper salsas. Some of them have chili in as well. Some of them can add a bucket of oil in. Check the labels. I can't speak for any brands in particular, so it's a case of checking the labels. But a plain oil-free salsa is basically chopped up tomatoes and vegetables, so that will be pretty low calorie to begin with. Most will have a little bit of oil add in, so just take an account with that. You know, if it's a very low calorie one, very, very low in oil, you can use a lot more of it, whereas if it's a very oily one, you're going to need to use a lot less of it, or you're going to be adding a ton of calories to your meal. Mustard. Mustard could be used, again, both raw as a side condiment or in cooking. You can get all different types, going from very mild to very hot, personal preference. And even if you're not a fan of mustard, you may like it, just say a teaspoon in a beef casserole. You won't taste the mustard, but it will just add some flavour there. So I like mustard as well. It's very low calorie, especially since you don't use a lot. Mint sauce. You can also get mint jelly. Mint jelly is very sugary, but mint sauce, a basic mint sauce is just mint and vinegar and they add a bit of sugar in, but you're only using a small amount of mint sauce, and different brands have different sugar amounts in them, so you could always try making your own, or looking for one that has less sugar in it. But even if it does have sugar in it, you're not using a ton of it because it is quite strong. So mint sauce is a good one, especially good for lamb and Indian dishes as well. It's good with. Horseradish sauce. Now, I would personally go for the hot one and use less of it if you like hot food. The creamed one, as it sounds, is creamier. It is more fattening. It is higher calorie. So if you like the creamed horseradish sauce, just be aware of that, and be aware that you can't use a ton of it. And that's the other thing with it, is because it's milder, you are able to eat more of it because it's not so spicy, it's not so hot. But then having more of it is going to be adding more calories. Tamari sauce, that's very similar to soy sauce, so use it in the same way as you would soy sauce. Miso paste, again, that's another very low calorie thing that you can add to flavour Oriental dishes, and it is literally comes in a paste, sachets, very low calorie, very flavourful. Shallots are similar to onions and garlic and leeks, all of those, you use those in the same way. Whew, that's 30 things at least I've listed there. I'm just checking my list, see if there's anything I've missed off that I can add to that. But to be honest, I could go on for hours like this. We could go around the supermarkets and pick hundreds of things. If you've, what I'll do is, along with this video, I'm going to list all of these things so you can keep them a reference, cut and paste, add them to your shopping list, see what you've got in the cupboards. Oh, one final thing just to be aware of that I forgot off the things that aren't so helpful are things that are mayonnaise based, because mayonnaise is essentially oil and egg yolk primarily, so of course those are very high fat things, and hence mayonnaise is very high fat. You can get very low fat, like kind of diet mayonnaise. It's basically additives and nonsense in a jar. It's not the end of the world because it wouldn't be allowed on the shelves if it was really dangerous for you. It doesn't add anything nutritionally, it's just empty calories, but it is very few empty calories. So if you really like your mayonnaise and you just can't get away from using like lots of it, because of course you're going to use full fat, you're going to have to use less of it if you want to reduce calories, by all means buy diet mayonnaise. I personally don't like the taste, but that's up to you, that's personal preference. But I've given you there at least 30 of my favourite things that I regularly use. They're pretty much all store cupboard ingredients, they all last a long time, you can get frozen versions as well, and I always have them to hand. So whatever we've got in the house in terms of vegetables, meat, fish, whatever, there's always a new inventive creative way we can turn that into not just a healthy meal but a really tasty, delicious meal as well. I hope that was helpful for you. I know that was a long one this time, but hopefully that's given you a lot of ideas that you can take away and put into your own meals. I would love to know what your favourite meals are and your favourite ways of making dishes taste good that are still healthy. So please do comment below. I love getting new ideas as well myself. And please tag somebody else if you know this video will be useful. Share it with your friends. And I look forward to hearing about all your healthy meals as well. I hope that was helpful. That's Polly from thefitmumformula.com.